G'day, citizens. I'm Execute. Welcome to the Inforunners. Joined today by Space Tomato and Algared.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. Doing good. How are you?
I'm tired, but I'm always tired.
I'm melting.
Yeah, it's hot down here.
I'm melting.
Right. Other side of the planet. You guys have the sun and stuff,
That's
right?
right.
You missed the glorious vision that was Algared walking to the kitchen earlier, and he's actually got shorts on under that. So, like, it's freaky because it's like you expect to see his suit, and it's just this
It's not a
sexy
full
hairy
suit.
legs. Yeah.
Nah, I like it. I like it.
As I said, it's not the underwear, as you often try to.
Vision for people.
I do try to imagine.
doing.
I'm sorry. Not gonna lie. Spend the whole show.
All right, so this episode is going to be us.
Motion breaking for you.
This episode is going to be us looking at gameplay that we know is coming this year and trying to speculate on beyond that. So we kind of know what's coming in the first 6 months, and it's trying to look at what's coming in the latter half of the year. So yeah, and yeah, I don't know. How do you guys want to kick this off?
Well, I suppose the other thing that goes with this is this is even before the IGF have had their big meetings.
Yeah.
And so this is us speculating on where we think it's going to go, and then after they've had the meetings, we're going to have a better idea of where we're actually headed. And so this is us looking forward.
We may or may not have a follow-up episode, is what Algared's trying to say in short. So we'll see. All right, real quick, because I did forget. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And thank you to all the people that went an extra mile on the end of the video in the credits. Right, Space. So
yeah,
where do you want to start with this? Because I think we can kind of go through what we know, and then kind of, or do you think we just go straight into it?
Well, I guess let's talk about what's most exciting.
Yep.
What and man, there's so much going on now that it comes from all directions. To be honest, I think one of the more interesting things we could talk about is actually something we didn't discuss before this episode. The new profession that's coming into this game this year. So there are a few. We're probably going to see engineering as a profession come in, right?
Yep.
Medic, I think, with the longer form missions we're going to be talking about, is going to expand a lot. Logistics, I believe, being somebody who works with the cargo boxes as opposed to a cargo hauler who's actually trucking them. I think those are two professions that are going to take big steps forward.
Yep.
And then mining missions, finally, we've been waiting since, like, I think, second quarter of last year for those to come on. There's a lot of potential in professions coming in, but the one that I think is most hyped that people don't talk about is probably exploration. And that really comes in when you have the things that you need to find. And, you know, despite people wanting to find jump points, I think resources would be the most obvious thing. Ways to find them, which would be the new scanning that we've seen that they're trying to do with Quantum Boost, and then a way to get other people to find out, which would be the waypoints with the star map. So we know two of those things are coming in this year with the locations we've been getting and the star map. All we really need to see is that scanning update they introduced with the Drake Cutter. And I think that could be exploration proper coming to the game, and that could be a huge shift.
I think you're right there. I think it's really been locked behind the star map, though. So, sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say, also tied in with that is not only that ability to find those locations, but also mark the beacons and actually,
that's
where to get.
That's
so
true.
Yeah, share that information.
All ties in with that star map as well. So the star map as well as scanning and
I just wrote down what you said there. So we've got medic, engineering, logistics, repair, mining, salvage, and bounty hunting. And they're all very. Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know about repair.
Yep.
I guess it depends on what you think of as repair. It feels like repair and refining are like.
Oh, refining might be in there too.
Off and on for them.
So basically, I was just listing things that we heard about in passing last year, or that was on the roadmap at one point. So the Crucible is on the roadmap. Things like you've obviously seen them talking about the different engineers. We heard them talking about different medical things. We know the Apollo's coming this year. Repair, we've already had the hand tool there already, so that already leads into repair. Repair is literally the yin to yang of salvage. That's why we've also got salvage on there. Mining, as you said, and bounty hunting. And I think bounty hunting is the first part of the scanning stuff. If you remember any of the leak stuff that was out, it was all about bounty hunting and scanning on foot. And I also think that goes back to the mining as well, because they talked about FPS mining in the prisons, if you remember that. So that'll all be a part of it as well. The funny thing is, you can pick one gameplay and it almost points to two others. Like they're all cross adjacent and they all touch each other, and they're all they're almost foundational.
I'm sure you'll
definitely
remember. I even talked about the old scanning for bounty hunting. You know, you'd actually see someone and do a scan and see, oh yeah, that's that person. Yeah, that's the mark.
Yeah,
and
you'd be able to bring up their details, like their age and known.
You can see it in the Held the Line trailer when they're scanning ships and characters. They're popping up the details, and it's how I always. That was actually one of the things that I don't care for combat too much, but one of the games that kind of led me to Star Citizen inadvertently was two of the games I reference a lot are Prey 2, the original concept for Prey 2, which was like a space bounty hunter, and Star Wars 1313, which you play as Boba Fett. And this idea of being like this sci-fi bounty hunter, scanning somebody in a crowd and seeing who they are and then finding a way to restrain them. That's cool. And I never thought I'd be interested in that in Star Citizen, but here we are.
Ironically, two games that never saw the light of day, but they were both, I agree with you. Especially the Prey one. The Prey was way better concept. Like the one we got was okay, but the other concept was way better in my opinion.
Hey, I love the immersive sim that came from Prey, and I appreciate what Arcane did with that, but the original concept for Prey 2, ooh, that was cool. That's sick.
You can actually go. That trailer is still on the net if you want to go look it up. So
I can also remember them talking, Star Citizen talking about, or CIG talking about the way you'd scan people, and it was literally that type of idea. You know, I think they talked about that around the same time the Blue came out, because that was, you know, they had the bat and the handcuffs that came with that as well. So you'd scan them, then you go and apprehend them, and you know, so it wasn't just
beat them down with the baton.
They were talking about.
So the closest we've got right now is kind of like scanning mining rocks and pieces of salvage and the info. So that's its infancy, right? So you can see how that can develop, and you can see how you can take that from almost every profession in the game and see how you get different details and stuff like that. So I think scanning is definitely a big thing that's coming in this year. All right, so we'll put scanning down as a big one.
And you know, here's actually something that's related to scanning and exploration and everything, and I think is a little unclear on their communications on it. That's the downloadable maps. They like kind of touched on that when they talked about the maps, but I'm not sure I believe that would release with the first star map. That does seem like the kind of thing that they'd wait to release when maybe they were bringing in hacking or data management or something.
Depends how it's built. Right, because if you foundationally build it to be segmented from the start, it could come in segmented like that, where, you know, so just to quickly touch on what you were talking about is you might go to Horizon and you have to buy the map for Horizon, so because it'll only give you the main landmarks, but then you can get all the details as you go around and scan it for yourself and find all that stuff. So that also leads into making maps as well, Space, if you think about it. Like a new location opens and it's never been mapped before, someone will, you know, their job will be just to walk around on foot and scan the whole thing and then sell that.
And I could see that working like, hey, with just the procedural generation, you got a space station, you got the rough layout, you know roughly what, but you don't know what's necessarily in those locations. But also, if you build a base that hasn't been mapped by someone, so someone going in is going to be wanting to create those maps. So I could see how you'd be doing that downloadable stuff. You know, you'd get to a terminal, bang, okay, I've got the base layout. So I could see how you'd work it. So I could see that coming.
If you look at it backwards, it's almost like fog of warring. You know, like in an RTS, the fog of war. It's the inverse of that. So I don't know. If they build it like that from the beginning, it could go in. It really depends how they've built it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. But it's kind of indicative of how big the steps are they're taking now compared to previous years. We would have never been talking about download, like even last year when they showed us their little concept for maps, none of us would have even considered downloadable maps, you know? So I'm glad that like they're starting to work at those higher level functions for this stuff.
Where you need your droid. Get your droid to plug in and do an R2D2.
Oh man. Let's get started on AI blades, huh? That's the conversation.
So the other one I want to talk about we did talk about this a little bit before the show, and I think this is a big one, right? And it's distribution centers, because this feeds into so many different things. And we were saying before the show, you've kind of got outposts that are at the low end, and then space stations at the high end, and then this distribution centers is now this middle point. And you added to this, and I agree with you. Is a city is kind of like a bigger distribution point, but there's so much coming out of what's in those. Like the big one, I think one of the big gameplays this year will be raids. And if you look at the whole thing, like, well, I wrote everything out before the show just so everyone's aware. And the thing that was really clear is it's all foundational tech. But the thing that Space pointed out, and well, Space, I'll let you speak to it, but it was basically like, this is all the stuff for a solo game. And then all the thing that kind of cracked it for me was when you said multiplayer. It's that movement to going from a single player game to a multiplayer game. I think that's the big move we're going to see with all this stuff this year.
Yeah. In the beginning of 2023, like it felt like a slow year, and I think it could have been a lot better than it was. But the game we were playing at the end of the year allowed for 6 people to get in 2 different ships and run a full salvage operation where everybody's doing something, and all of those things are different. And I don't think I've ever played a game that allowed for that. You know, I've played group games. I've gone in with my friends in Battlefield and in Halo, and even in a game like Eco where we do. And I think that's more leaning towards this side of like everybody does something that adds in, but not in a scenario like this, Well,
that was all playing separately but together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is part of a crew versus part of a village. There is a difference.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at what's coming up with this new year, and then looking at these distribution centers, it's the same thing in a different environment. So we see, even from just what they've shown us, the mission has 4 people in the back of a dropship. So now you need somebody who's going to be able to fly that dropship and fly it well under fire. Somebody who's going to be able to be a turret in that dropship and scan both the ground and air for targets. People who can be in the back of the dropship, able to run out and secure the area. You're going to need people who can easily move boxes, people who can move those vehicles that are specific to that area in the distribution center. All these different types of roles factoring into updated reload, updated inventory, better scopes, engineering gameplay, better mapping, FPS scanning, local maps, mini maps. All these improvements are filing in to help with this game system they're building. And I feel like it's going to be the actual final minimal viable product that they want to sell from Stars of the Sun.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here listening to what you're saying, and I'm realizing it's combat coming first again, but that combat leads the way. And so let's say in the latter 6 months or whenever they get to it, you move in with combat. So it starts with a raid, and then like you said, you need a specialist. So what if the next version of raids is like we've got hacking missions right now. What if a hacking mission is a part of that distribution set? But, so at the moment we've got one objective where you go in and you steal some loot or whatever. But then what if it's like multi-layered and you've got to hack, attack, you've got to rescue a VIP? You can see very quickly, as soon as you start to add other objectives to that, it becomes rather complicated and way more cool and emergent gameplay.
Yeah. But even with your distribution centers, as you were talking about, that ties in with I think it goes even further. It ties into the Persisitent Hangars, ties into the freight elevators and the way we'll get cargo into our elevator. But all it ties into logistics.
Yep.
Because that ties into the loader for ships, how to best load a ship and how to organise where the cargo is going and what's going where. And so I can even see even those base things, even those things just in our own hangars, tying with the wider gameplay and also professions. And so, yeah, as you said, it's just lots of basic stuff, but flying off into so many other areas.
Yeah. I think
go ahead.
I think it's to I'm going to pull my speculation cap a little tighter down on my cranium. It feels kind of like what we might see with Arena Commander 2. Because they're starting with combat and racing, but why not have private servers where you can go do mining and salvage with your group in a reclaimer? Being able to do some quick gameplay in any sort of scenario Star Citizen can set up in a place where, yes, You're not affecting your reputation, your money, or your loot in game, but you get a chance to just practice and enjoy yourself. And that kind of thing in Arena Commander could not only solve their problem with people who want these private servers, and we all know doing private servers in the PU would be, I don't even know how that would work, but it would also let people like play Star Citizen without giving it 3 hours a night.
Yeah. I've often wondered about private servers because I think the scope of the game has changed so much that trying to think about, well, we know they run server mesh on a local machine, right? But like, what does that mean? Can you run an entire planet on one machine, like on a local server? And I think it would really limit the scope of private servers. I think it would be limited to like a small moon or something. I don't think you'd get a whole system.
Yeah, exactly. So just put it in Arena Commander.
But as Space just said, putting it in Arena Commander gives you an opportunity to size so much in, and because of Death of the Spaceman, because of the fact that, they want the decisions to matter, having those ways to practice, or, you've got someone new on your crew, you want to check whether what their skills are. Okay, let's run an Arena Commander. Let's see how you are at this role, or how are we going to solve this engineering problem. Let's run it in Arena Commander rather than taking our expensive ship out. And
you got to be able to be willing to blow up while you're practicing. And Arena Commander would give us that ability. I don't know if that's something that they might do this year, but I was talking with Paul the other day, and he thinks that they are going to have another third big update. And of course, he theorizes that'll include Theaters of War.
I really kind of want Theater Wars to become a thing, and we've been saying for years now, especially me. But SA is the idea that is the one that convinced me of it, was that it's a part of the multiplayer part of Squadron. If you think about it, if you've got a captive audience that has brought this single player game, and you can go to them and go, all right, here's this multiplayer mode that you can play. I just don't think, obviously, I don't think Star Citizen's ready enough for prime time right behind Squadron. And if you've got this little mode, even if it's only got 4 or 5 maps, where you can get a taste of what is to come, and that's the Arena Commander mode, like the Theaters of War Arena Commander, where you can go in and you can play a Battlefield-esque experience where it's 32 versus 32. You pull them all in, and then you go, oh, by the way, we're making this, which is Star Citizen, and it's like, but it'll be here in a couple of years. People will come for that and stay for that.
The actual brain-breaking energy of when people realize that, like, they played Squadron 42 and it came from the same people who are making Star Citizen would be, they're like, wow.
I'm saying that already.
That's a scam, though.
Yeah. And there are people that I've got to the point now where I've realized there's certain people that are just having a lot of fun calling it a scam to hurt other people's feelings. I've got to that point where like I honestly thought that trailer was going to convert everyone.
I mean, it was a meme a couple of years ago. Like it there was a point at which it was iffy. Not iffy in the sense that it was a scam, but iffy in the sense that it was actually going in any direction that made sense compared to like the ultimate goal. Like something was always going to come out of this, but it always was like kind of in question. But I think ever since they really started to ratchet down with the back end tech, especially last year, and then now it's like, come on, guys.
You can actually start to see where they were headed. We knew something was coming. We didn't know exactly what the end form would be, but now you're getting that idea where you can see.
I think with what happened last year, it was all kind of like heads down, bum up type of thing to get all that position. And if you look at the notes that I've written here, I know you guys can't see them, but Space and Algared can, right? That is all foundational tech for a single player game. And as Space kind of alluded to, and the light bulb moment for me is you've now got the single player game. You've got to port it over to a multiplayer game, and it's starting to now work on those multiplayer things that were not required. This is literally that breaking the dam. It's going from Squadron 42 to now moving them over to Star Citizen and making them multiplayer.
The dam, huh?
Yeah, the dam. So you can like look at raids. We didn't need raids for Squadron 42, but the combat systems and all that under that we needed, right? And so we've got that. It's just building. So this whole last year was finishing of the foundational tech, and now moving in. everything from it's just a list of what would be required for Squadron 42 in those notes that I've got here, you know. Even things like shop improvements like that, we know you go into shops in Squadron 42 because they showed them going through the malls and stuff to talk to what's her face,
Right?
Dreo or whatever her name was.
Julie.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember her name. The
Trejo?
Dreho, that's it. Yeah, Dreho. Yeah. So we know you go through shops. You can probably buy food and stuff that are there as well. So I'm pretty sure shops are a part of Squadron 42. We know you go to the armory officer to get guns and stuff. So why wouldn't you be able to go to other places and buy guns and stuff? And I think that'll be a part of it. So you do get a lot of stuff on the USS Stanton, the Idris that's there, but I think you'll find random guns in missions and stuff as well, and in possible shops. Like you go to a guy and he's like, "If you do this for me, I'll give you this." You know, like side missions.
People can't forget the shop vendor from CitizenCon. What was that? 21.
Yeah,
I think it was in Pyro. That they have taken a long freaking time to get that out, and I think as always, a lot of their problems with AI is the part of like the back end and the servers and everything. And I think that's one thing that we're going to start to also see with this year specifically is the verse coming alive with shopkeepers being able to actually talk to us and exchange stuff, or NPCs that actually have wild lines that are going off in cities, or there's a lot of things in the monthly reports that weren't at CitizenCon that kind of point towards that.
Well, certain systems require other systems to be in place, right? You obviously know that, but AI is one of those ones. Is like, if I start making an AI and I don't know what the AI's got to do, how can I make an AI? And that's like I'm gonna have all these. Now they've got that in place. That's why we're seeing the AI come at this later stage. They're gonna have to have the whole game kind of planned out to know what it's going to do, to build it to do that, right? And it's got to know how the humans are going to do it, so how it can do it as well. So the AI will be one of the later things to come. The combat AI has always been there because it's pretty simple. It's like, I see you, I shoot you, right? And that will all get reworked and changed as well, because obviously we know all the personalities are coming, things like that. I still think AI is further away, personally.
Yeah, I was about to say, added onto that, the personalities are also going to add to that AI. Like, the AI they want is more than just I see you, I shoot. It's crap, I'm outnumbered, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. It's
I'm going to take you down with me. There's a whole plethora of those different styles.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's the cart before the horse. Like, I can't make a bounty hunting AI if bounty hunting doesn't exist. That type of thing. So
and that's more of building life into this. I mean, varied AI is a big part of also just, you want to go to an outpost in one star system, it should be different factions, it should be different spray paint, different graffiti, different manufacturers, maybe not different manufacturers, but like, and the people should be acting different, dressed different, talking different, and all those things are what makes Stanton feel more like Stanton. Right, that we don't have anything to compare to.
Yeah, I think that's why the AI we see at the moment is that real basic stuff, like walking. Well, they're not standing on seats as much anymore, but you know, like walking around and, you know, just doing real basic stuff. That'll probably improve a lot, but it won't be until the other stuff's in, until we actually see them doing things.
Oh, they better not stop standing on chairs. Like CIG, y'all better program that into AI forever in Star Citizen.
That's a form of
protest.
I did know
they need to build it into the lore.
Yeah. I was in game the other day, and I was walking through Hurston, as you know, old man Hurston want to do. And I kid you not, they were all protesting. They were all on chairs. But as old man Hurston got close to them, what did they do? They hopped off their chairs and started doing stuff. So they know. They know.
Old man Hurston's not bothered.
That's right. Oh, they knew old man Hurston was coming, so they hopped off their chair.
He would be bothered, yeah.
You know, so I thought that quite interesting to see that change was coming, because in the past that wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have seen that.
So what you're telling me is that you're fixing the glitch that CIG just hasn't been able to.
Oh no, I think they've fixed it. It's just that, you know, they're now reacting to old man.
Right. They've got the reputation factor now.
Yeah. I know old man Hurston's a Hurston, so I have to pretend we're working.
Yeah. So, you want to say?
I was gonna actually change subject over to location. Because as much gameplay as it feels like is coming into this game, locations also feel like they're kind of gaining their archetypal status. Like we talked about distribution centers and cities, space stations, we know about caves, and then kind of the odd one out that is really going to make a big difference, building interiors. That's probably like a second half of this year sort of thing.
Yeah.
Base building is a big thing that they've mentioned. I think you kind of said that before before the show that they can't stand so much behind server mesh anymore. So it looks like the next one's going to be base building. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, that goes into the outpost building. It goes in.
Oh, he had a stroke.
We lost Al.
He'll be back. He can hear us.
Did those NPCs on the chairs come back to get him?
Yep, they
disconnected his internet.
Right.
There he is. You're back.
There he is.
There you go, Algared.
Paul says I was just actually telling you guys the release date of Squadron 42. Scary.
Chris pulled the plug.
Tells everyone.
Yeah, Chris pulls the plug. Yeah. Right, you're saying, Algared?
Yeah, so it really ties into that whole outpost building and the outposts and the ability to log off at outposts and if I'm building an outpost, it also gives me that ability to decorate and put all that stuff down. So that you can see that whole tying in with the way people like to spend time building and decorating and doing stuff. It certainly appeals to the type of thing I want to do is go to an outpost. And I can build up to a profitable place.
It's more of that multiplayer foundational stuff. And that's what I'm seeing. It is the next part of this. Like if you were going to take a single player game and move it into a multiplayer game, it's again working on that foundational stuff. And I'm just seeing it more and more. So if, I'd almost say that in the comments. If you guys want to like think about what is a single player game of Squadron 42 and take something from Squadron 42 and multiply it, as in make it multiplayer, what would that be? What would be the next steps of those? And I think you, like just looking at the list here, I can see things that they're going to move over to be more multiplayer. And obviously we've seen it in the past where, as you said, Space, it usually comes from racing and combat first because it's very foundational, and then it rolls out into other professions. But like, it's just how much are we going to get this year? Are we going to get multiplayer medical? That might be a bad example, but you get my point, right?
I think even more than like making it, I guess server meshing and pyro are synonymous, but base building might also be like just the next pyro, because it's very gameplay focused, and everything that they're building, not everything, so many of the things they're building are kind of leading in that direction. I mean, this could be a year that they instead of focusing on the road to pyro, they could just focus on the push for base building this year. We don't really know because they haven't gotten their messaging together, but
it's foundational though. It really is a foundational thing. Like
foundational, but also it scales much bigger than pyro does for hype, right? Like they can base building will be exciting when pyro's coming out, when Nyx is coming out, when Castra's coming out, when Terra, like they can always add in new things around that.
You can connect all the dots pretty simply though. Like Algared and I have talked about this before, where essentially the modular room system now is literally can be used anywhere, and all you're doing is putting in a different container. Am I putting it underground? Am I putting it in a building? Am I putting it in a space station? It is literally, am I putting it in a ship? It is literally all the same thing. It's just, once you got that procedural generation down, you're just putting it in a container. And
but the other thing that ties really strongly in with this is you've got it down in your notes as part of SBS, that's degradation.
Yep.
The parts breaking down. So you got an outpost. The door's buggered, someone shot it up, got to get repaired. The power plants.
And that goes further because engineering then goes from just being not just ships to buildings and vehicles, right? And weapons, and it all becomes connected.
And this is
you can then see why the derelict outposts are derelict, because their parts ran out. They didn't have means to replace them, so
I'll give you the example that I gave you a couple of weeks ago, and I'll give it to Space this time. I was saying, Space, can you imagine Pyro, right? So you take one of the stations in Pyro, how they're all kind of run down and shitty, right? Can you actually see a part of the game eventually, right? So it's down the line, right? So the pirates get so fed up living where they're living, where they'll move into Stanton, take over a space station in Stanton, and eventually someone from Stanton would go into Pyro, do up that whole station so it's as good as the one in the Stanton, and the cycle repeats. I can see that.
Would be fun.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of think of as like major annual dynamic events they could do, where it changes the entire balance of a star system. But I don't know how, like, I would take so much effort.
I think a lot of the foundational stuff is there. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, so if you look at the elevators in Pyro, they're just the elevators with a few loose cables and new textures. So again, if you can come in and put in a coat of paint and tidy some things up, you see where I'm going with this. There's only a few systems missing to connect all these dots. So you can have a whole, not just a dynamic economy, but like a literally dynamic game where like you can do up, obviously it's going to cost you money and resources, but if you can get the resources to where they need to go, again, part of that dynamic economy, I can see that like you could go to somewhere like the old Covalex and do the whole thing up. But the next question is, why would I want to, right? So it's the same thing. Yeah, what's the advantage to me? Like, so again, if we go, like if we discover a rare mineral on a moon, right? Will players eventually go there, build a base, build a space station, and does it flourish? And then eventually that runs out, and then it dies and becomes derrickle again. And then eventually the cycle repeats again where something else is found there. I think that is what it's going to be. Like eventually that's what they're moving towards.
That's the basis of exploration that people miss when they say, hey, how are we ever going to have exploration in this game when there's one star system or two star systems, or everybody's already been here for years, because it's not about what's there. If you can find something other people have found before, that's not, you don't have to be the first person.
I think it ties with names for the prospector. Like prospecting is a form of exploration. You're looking for something.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Odyssey ties in with that as well. That's same.
It's kind of like hiding things in plain sight, going back to where other people have gone before, and all of a sudden a new. I know it sounds like a new node spawn or something's regenerated or something like that. It's very gamification, but
it's gonna be gamey.
It works. It works, and all of a sudden that kicks off a second renaissance, so to speak, and that place gets a new life. And the first person that moves in and basically takes over that old outpost and gets the bar running and off to the races, and that guy makes a whole bunch of money because he got there first. And
Brother Drake.
Yep, it'll happen, and we're getting to that point. You can see why they've taken so long to build these fundamental foundations, because now it's going to reap all this fruit.
This is also, I think, we're kind of bouncing off a good conversation surrounding base building. Probably something that we'll have later in the year when they tell us more about it, but like engineering, as you mentioned, that's a big part of base building, right? It's kind of a consequence, but also a reason. Resources are also kind of a reason. Why don't we talk about like the other reasons that people might be actually doing base building in Star Citizen? Because this could be the end game that they have planned.
You can take every ship and basically, so you can have a farm, you can have a mine, you can have salvage, you can have refining. You can take all those components that work in ships and put them into buildings.
Do you think that you'd be able to have a base that has a cargo depot, a refinery, and like, so you'd be able to basically have minerals come in, refine them, turn them into weapons, and ship them out to make money? You think that reasonable?
It's like anything, right? So the bigger you go, the more you need, the more defenses you need, the more protection you need, right? We know that they're going to have different sizes of buildings. They've essentially talked about that, where the Pioneer can do extra large and everything down, and every time you go down a ship, you can't do the bigger stuff. So as you scale it up, you can have limitations in power and component size. So that's going to limit how far you can go. So you might only just be able to do the cargo one if you have a small one. But then all of a sudden you go to medium, you can do cargo and refining. You know what I mean? So you can see it kind of makes itself.
And then tied in with that is that downgrading of that material as it wears out.
Yeah.
And so
more people,
I go before I can't maintain the structures and keep them pristine or keep them so they're functioning. And so that limit the size and the space of them. So
and then eventually
I might be able to have everything that you said.
Yeah, but you
have a lot of people maintaining it.
You eventually get to a size though where you can just duplicate what you've already got. So if you've got one that's only got 4 slots, can't you just duplicate the whole thing and it goes to 8 slots, so to speak? But then you need twice as many people. You see where I'm going with this? The limitation will be people.
But this also ties in with the land claims and the size of the plot that you've got.
True.
So if you've got
the amount of material,
area, that gives you more space to work on. If you've only got a 6x6 or then you're limited. So not only is it the space you're allowed to build on, but also the size that you're able to keep maintained and keep functioning. And then that ties in with the supplies you got. So that brings in your logistics, it brings in your repair, it brings in engineering. There's so
And-
much, but just
and we're talking
salvage
about
even.
engineering on a ship makes a lot of people worried and think
Mm.
that the game's too much. But imagine engineering in an outpost with more than 6 buildings.
Yep.
You got life support, power, all that kind of stuff, security, lights, all that for each of those buildings, and you have to keep it powered through some sort of resource distribution, whether you're shipping it in or getting it from the ground. Like, there's going to be a lot that has
Yeah.
to go into this.
I'm just thinking in my own head here. They also reconfirmed defenses and shields. Like we'd speculated shields for many years, but it wasn't until that base building where they showed shields.
Yeah.
And we'd speculated that because of things like the A2 and stuff. So there's defenses there as well, right? And it's also going to depend on what system you're in. They talked about that as well. Like your costs go up, but you're not going to be attacked in a high security area. You know, so you got your beginner friendly area, and you can go right to the other extreme where you've got no support at all, but no fees, but you've got to defend for yourself. So again, we're going to see this gamut. That's obviously where all the profit's going to be, doing it yourself.
And look, I can see them doing that because that whole base building and the shields, you know, you can see. I just had images of Empire Strikes Back, you know, taking up the shield generator on off. You can't tell me that someone who loved Star Wars, who grew up on Star Wars and had that whole passion, hasn't been influenced by that scene as well. Wanting it in a game.
Also leads into other vehicles as well, doesn't it? Obviously, there's some kind of Atlas platform with a shield on the back of it or something like that.
Yeah. I got a question for you guys about this year that I don't think has come up enough. Well, okay, enough. We dropped this from conversation, I think, about a year ago, maybe or so. If everything does go smoothly with their plans, let's say Pyro does come into the PU in the summer and static server meshing comes out, we get a basic version where Pyro and Stanton are their own servers, and the game is running as it is now. Do you think, at what point do you think they'll be starting to give us updates on Nyx?
See that?
Do you think it'd be before they even launch Pyro? First half?
See, the more limited they keep it, the less work they have to redo later, right? So as long as once they get that base, because I'm realizing how fundamental to a multiplayer game the base building is, right? And again, looking at all the notes here, just knowing how much it's all foundational stuff from Squadron 42, I think this year is really the first year of rolling into the multiplayer part, into Star Citizen. I almost think it's just how quickly everything moves over from Squadron to Star Citizen. Do we actually start seeing new stuff that moves into that, or is this, you know, last year was the foundation for, you know, the wrapping up of Squadron? Is this year just literally rolling everything into Star Citizen? Is it a whole year of just bringing Star Citizen up to date? And that's the question I'm sitting here. You know, are we going to see much new stuff, or is it really just this whole year is bringing Star Citizen up to date?
Well, I don't know, but what about the Nyx system, man?
Well, so what I'm saying is, like, is it a cut? Like, well, think about it. We've had Stanton for this long. Like, just adding Pyro is adding that whole dark side of the equation in, right? You know, like once you add the piracy type area in, do you need another area?
Well,
what does Nyx give you that Pyro doesn't already give you?
A lawless, but not but not antagonistic.
So neutral. So neutral is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay then.
And
I can say
that's
that.
a lot of opportunity, especially when it comes to base building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for Nyx,
that's true.
We need Pyro because it's the jump point there.
Right.
And I think what it does give you, as you just said, the opportunity for base building, because Nyx isn't just Levski.
Yeah, it gives you those three areas.
That field is supposedly littered with Mar and Par outposts or Mar
derelict stations. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Derelicts, but lots of small settlers are out there. They're not just living on Nyx.
Okay.
And so that also gives you that base building area on asteroids and a lot more. So, I could see it. But
you think they would start talking about it before we even had Pyro?
I don't think so, because we need Pyro for the jump point.
But they like a couple of years ago, I think 2 or 3 ISCs, they started talking about Nyx before they were like, oh, never mind. Wait.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if they're just kind of like,
and I think Nix is almost ready because
Yeah.
it's just literally the asteroid belt in the system.
Mm.
And we know they've worked on, they did stuff where they were talking about lighting on Nix and putting in the light panels and stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's an experimental area where they work on. But it is an area, I think it's an area they do want to get in game as soon as they can. But I think part of it is getting the transport system from Pyro to Nix. Now, yeah, they could do it as another server. They could do a separate server for Stanton, Nix, and Pyro. But
what would be stopping that in your minds?
Money,
I think
because you've got to run a third server instead of just running two.
Yeah.
But at some point, they're going to be running dozens.
But it's a cart before the horse thing. We know one of the things they do money-wise at the moment is they love turning the number of the people that can be on a server up because it saves them money because they have to have less servers running.
Yeah.
And you've only got to be on the live server to see how it runs compared to the PTU to know that the live is not a priority right now for them.
Yeah.
And I think that the different servers, like, they don't want to expand out too much. They want to get that jump point type gameplay working because that enables them to kind of do that transition.
That's a good point. So they got to scale intelligently, and that kind of, it's a little worrying when you think about how many star systems they want to have and have all of those star systems controlled by multiple servers. But as I guess they get server meshing to a place where they want it to be, there's less shards. So ultimately the server sizes wouldn't be ballooning out of control.
Actually, the other way you can look at it too is adding Nix in is really, all it's doing is change. So say there's 100 servers, right? And you go to Stanton, it'd be 50 doing Stanton and 50 doing Pyro. Wouldn't it just be then 33 doing Nix, 33 doing Pyro, 33 doing Stanton?
Right.
Really isn't that different?
It all depends on the player population per shard.
Yeah. And again, when it's static like that, initially when it's static, when it goes to dynamic, you can change it. But when it's static, if no one wants to be in Nix and they've got 33 Nix servers running and everyone's in Stanton, then you need more Stanton servers. So that's the problem. Where if you just keep it to 2, it's a bit more manageable. I think it's when they move to dynamic. I think that's probably when see Nix. Yeah,
I think that'll be the limit. That's what we're really waiting for, that ability to have that dynamic server meshing so they can shift a lot of I think jump points ties in with that. But that's why I don't think they'll go beyond Pyro first. Now, I could be wrong, but that to me makes sense.
I think we're on it.
That static server meshing is kind of like, how is that going to work if we're all in Stanton, everybody loads into a shard, and in that shard is 2 servers, and one server is Stanton and one is Pyro. I don't know which finger to use.
Not the naughty
and like, if everybody starts going over to that Pyro server, is that just going to start spitting people out into other shards in Pyro? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they have to essentially, when it's static like that, you're almost going to have to spin up. At the moment, it spins up another Stanton server, but that would mean every time the population becomes too much, it's got to spool up 2.
That's what I'm saying, though. So if there's too many people in Pyro on your shard and you jump from Stanton to Pyro, what is the game going to do? Because if it kicks you into another shard, what happens if you try to go back to Stanton? To keep you in that shard or back to your original?
And that's kind of what me and Algared are talking about. So I think Nix is tied to dynamic server meshing, because if you're limiting it to 2, it's fine. But as soon as you go to 3, there's just this erroneous cost. The costs go out of proportion because you could literally have a server there running of Nix, but nobody's in Nix.
And I'm wondering how that works. Like, that's going to happen with Pyro and Stanton.
But I think when you've got that dynamic server meshing, it's like the rooms. If no one's in the room, the room's not there. You can just... But the second I move to that room, the room, it just creating a new container.
Object container streaming. Literally. And so I think that so that's what dynamic server meshing is. It's actually the merging of server meshing or dynamic server meshing and object container streaming and getting them to change them dynamically. And I think it's not until that comes into TLC next. I think it's really that, like, just from a money perspective, like the cost will be huge.
That's going to be interesting if they don't talk about Nix. Like, if they release Pyro and they're not talking about the second star system, I think a lot of people will have questions, and it'll be interesting to see what their answer is for why they haven't started talking about it. Well, because everybody's going to be expecting them to roll through it
Yeah,
once
well,
Pyro's on.
well, I think it'll tell how server. Well, with 322 is meant to have the first server meshing stuff in it, right? So it's going to see how well that went. If that goes fantastic, we're going to go straight through static and straight into dynamic. You know? So it's just going to roll
That would be
straight
great.
through. So could we realistically, by the end of this year, looking at actual operational static server meshing servers, can we be in Nix by the end of the year?
I think so. I don't believe it will happen, but I think it's possible.
I think it's possible, but I don't think it'll happen. It just
Yeah.
depends how quickly. Again, we are noticing a massive movement from one side to the other. But again, you got to remember, it's network engineers, right? That they are not everyone at the company is a network engineer. So, can they get that amount of work done in a year?
Yeah.
They've got server meshing to do, and it's possible. Like, if Nix is just sitting there done and it's a matter of like turning it on, I think we can all agree Nix is more than likely probably already done, you know?
Well, I'm really interested to know if Nix is kind of one of their testing grounds for building interiors, maybe. Like if they want to really rework that, because we saw what happened with the reworks with what was it? Something recently that they just redid and brought in and it was beautiful. I don't
Horus?
No.
Are you talking about a location?
Yeah. Just the environments in Pyro. What they've done with those space stations, the rest drops, they took them to Pyro and made them look completely different. Like we can tell that the environment artists who are working on their new space stations and their outposts, let's be honest, the Montreal people have done great work. Yeah. And I'm wondering if they've gotten the chance to get their grubby little hands on Levski, because that place already looked amazing. And like throwing some global illumination on that with the original concept art, that could be the coolest place in the game.
Yeah. It's the thing I'm noticing is there's key things, or how do I put this, key art that makes things certain things, right? And the example I'm going to use is Port LSR and Seraphim, right? And a lot of people love Seraphim, a lot of people miss Port LSR, but I honestly think the thing that really made Port LSR, now a lot of people say it was the outside. To me, I think it was the ASOP terminal. That custom ASOP terminal room, and you got to admit right now, every ASOP terminal in all the stations right now looks the same. But
so boring.
Again, once they have more assets in that library, they won't all look the same, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, is as they keep building those libraries out, the things will. I imagine they come back to Port Alisar and just regenerate the insides. Oh, not Port Alisar. The stations of Stanton, and they regenerate the insides. You can quickly see how different all of them will add. And that's just adding more assets to that library. Again, more foundational stuff. And again, eventually, I think if we get that original ASOP terminal that Port Alisar had, that'll make it Port Alisar again for me. You could leave the outside as it is, right? Because the key to me was the 3 rings, which Seraphim's got, and that ASOP terminal. That area was very unique. And you could, if you think about it, like the glass windows, that they had the same glass windows in Port Alisar as they had in Levski, but then they also had that custom elevator from Grimhex, but it was yellow, where you can start to see that they've got the art assets. It's just dialing them out, more textures, it's just adding to the pools of things they've already got. And over time, you can just see how that will just scale outward to every system in the game.
Yeah. They've done a lot to prepare for scaling this. I don't know if it's enough, but like even their company's goals, they're talking about trying to get 1,700 people in a single office in a few years. Like they clearly have a lot of ambitions to build what they're saying they're going to build. And, succeed or fail, I think people should maybe pay attention to the fact that they're actually trying. Because the gaming industry right now is... It's cool. It's inspiring because we get some really, really good stuff, but it's also really sad, man. We just had like one of the best years in gaming, and so many people got laid off. And it's just like, it's because the industry has gotten so boring. And to see CIG doing what they're doing.
And CIG, it's interesting. A lot of places,
they don't like to innovate. People don't like to innovate. And do you know why that is? Do you know why it is? It's really interesting because it does relate to
It's hard.
No,
and it costs a lot.
It's money. Money people want safe investments and a return on their investment, right? They don't want to hear Chris Roberts is going to build this game that's got server meshing and all this shit, and it's going to take years and years of R&D. They don't want that, but that's what we want as gamers, because then we get something new and different, right? And it's the fact that this game doesn't have a publisher is why it's going to be successful. That's the ironically funny thing.
I mean, I get the hesitancy of trying to get a return that makes something like this worth it, and like the whole investment side of things. Like, I understand their businesses, whatever, but it's valid, and that's why it's so annoying that people keep thinking this is some kind of scam because they're doing it and other people aren't. It's not because it's impossible or it's crazy. Oh, I mean, it is kind of crazy, but like the whole problem is just that the way that companies are built don't allow for this that much. And it'd be awesome if the gaming industry maybe put more of a spotlight on this, or other games. One of the other games I follow is an indie game that's been in development since just about as long as Star Citizen. It's called Universe Sim, and it just got its 1.0 release like last week.
Yeah,
and you don't see people really getting on its case for that, because they sat down and they did what they were trying to do and they made something great. And I think Star Citizen's doing the same thing, just at a bigger scale.
And they're a bit more transparent about it, where the Universe Sim was a bit more closed off. But yeah,
you follow?
Yes, I have been.
Yeah.
Algared?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of cut you off. What did you want to say? What you were going to say?
No, I was not.
No, that was my soapbox. You guys you can go ahead.
I think we'll start to wrap it up here, because otherwise we're going to keep going, because there is a lot to talk about on this. But,
and I just looking at that list, there's a whole pile of stuff we still haven't talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I might do is I might just leave these notes in the description below, so people can see what we were specifically talking about. So you can, well, it's too late now. It's at the end, but yeah, you could have opened it and had a look.
You guys don't have one more surprise topic?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm asking you.
No,
I feel like I've proposed all of my ideas throughout the show.
You are the gameplay guy. That's kind of why I brought you in on this episode, because that seems to be what the area you focus on, and it seems very poignant to have someone that really focuses on that to speculate with. So, and it was good. You had lots of insights that I, and I believe Algared hasn't considered either. So yeah, it again, bouncing off people. And I'm sure there's probably something me and Algared have said that you hadn't thought of as well. So that, and you were mentioning you were about to do a video. So hopefully this has been really good for you to take back and do your videos. So yeah, that's why we've done this.
I think one thing we should talk about before we go, because this is something that's going to affect everyone, are just like the general FPS and character changes. They've kind of been hovering around everything we've been talking about today, but that's the polish that's going to make the game feel way different this year, from reloads to the way that scopes will render, crosshairs, EVA controls. All that stuff is going to change how I mean, the physical interaction. I went back and I was watching the presentation, and I forgot that they added that thing where if you select the screen, it walks your character up, so it's right where you need it to be. And I realized this is basically just giving us the same thing when you go into a normal game and you click a button and it opens this menu on your screen, you're taken out of the game. It's the same thing. They're just walking us there instead of opening it right away. And it's a nice way to keep us in the game, but also polish the experience. Yeah. And that kind of stuff is getting added all throughout the first person experience this year.
Even how we get into our ships are going to change. Like, so you've got ships halfway in the middle at the moment where, say you walk up to a cutter, you press the button on the back and the door folds down. But if you get into, say, like a Hornet, it's got the old menu system. It's bringing all that up to the same level. And now you're going to, like, your character's physically going to reach out and press it.
I love the character reach out and touch for button, you know, and
so that's a lot of work, though, because, like, think of all the ships are going to... I start to think...
That's going to take a while.
I start to think that they're more likely going to leave that right till the end, until they're all, like, you know, they eventually go, right, so this is the end, this is the final gold pass, and now we're going to go back and do all of them. Because if they go back and keep going back and doing them all, they'll be forever doing it again. So you're probably going to...
That's why I think they stopped a couple of years ago. Because they realized they want to get like Maelstrom and engineering and stuff in before they do that.
It's like you said with the Retaliator. You know, they're going back and that's probably the first big thing they're going back and redoing, and bringing that, you know, doing the modules, doing all of that, and bringing the whole thing up to a gold standard, and go. So this is the what we want all ships to eventually be at. Now go back and do all of them.
Yeah, and if you look at the way, you know, Chris always talked about, you know, when you turn, you know, you do the joystick, you'd see your character turn the joystick, you press a button, you'd see a character reach out and press a button.
Gotcha.
if you have to keep changing your layout, that means you've got to keep changing the animation. And so, yeah, leaving it to the last thing, but I can see it coming, and I look forward to that. That nice feeling of, turning your shields and reaching out and turning that button on, depending on what button is on your ship as well. So,
and the MFDs, it's worried people because some screens have 2 MFDs, some have 1. You don't think you're going to be able to have all that info. Sometimes they're outside of your view, and that we knew this was coming, but just like I think 80% of the things they talked about at CitizenCon that they have talked about in the last 10 years, and we just didn't know when it was going to happen, this came back and surprised us. And we finally see you can put MFDs on your own visor, so you can always see them, you can customize them, you can control them. And again, it's just polish. We've been needing that.
All right. So I'm going to kind of cut it off here a bit. Space, what would you like to hear from people in the comments? Like, we will not stop talking. I know what we're like.
What are you excited for this year? There's a lot. Like, I don't want to focus on Pyro and Squadron because I think we're going to be doing that a lot. I'd like to know like the little things, the gameplay of what people are really looking forward to, because it feels like everyone's going to be eating good this year just from what they're saying. But they say a lot of things. No,
I don't disagree. Algared, what would you like to hear from folks?
What did we miss?
Yeah, that's a good one.
X is going to put up our list of the things we were thinking of, and I think, like, even though I said we've missed a whole pile, I think we've dotted every one of them at some point. It's just
there is a lot there to look at, and again, it wasn't until I wrote it out in that list that I could go, right, this is the single player foundation. We're now moving to a multiplayer game. I can now see it. Like, now we've done this episode, I can see where we're heading this year. Well, that's my 2 cents. And I guess that would be what I'd ask in the comments below. Like, do you guys kind of agree? We have that single player foundation. They're now going to move into a multiplayer foundation, and base building's a part of that, because obviously base building wasn't required for Squadron 42 at all. What other things, like Algared said, what did we miss? What are some other multiplayer foundational things, right? And foundational, like, combat's a foundational thing, right? So that's why we're obviously seeing that lead the charge with what Space said about FPS improvements and stuff like that. And
reputation.
Reputation is another one. But yeah, as Algared said, what have we missed? Because I think that's a big one. And is there any other things that you guys see coming? Because and I know I open it up to that, and people will go absolutely crazy and go AI farming, mine or farming or whatever, because that's all to come. And I again, if you follow this game long enough, they tend to do really foundational stuff and have a really strong foundation, and then move out from it. And again, like Space said, with the rolling out of planets, we knew they redid Stanton in 2.5 months. That's just another thing that they're going to end up rolling out. Do you think we'll get Nyx by the end of the year, like me and Space and Algared were talking about? So yeah. There's a lot there to unpack. There's quite a lot. We all know it's going to be a big year. It feels like a big year. I think that's kind of what I'm asking. Is what are you guys expecting?
Well, we get big game hunting. There's another one. We've talked about in the past.
Yeah, big game hunting, agriculture, and look, we don't even have ships for those. We have the Endeavor, but we don't have a bounty like a big game hunting ship. So you can see that it as they work on those things. Like, put it this way, Space, as we work on base building, and I'll ask Algared the same, I can fully see a ship coming this year that's tailored at base building. Another one, like that the MCV thing is clearly coming this year at some point.
What I think we should be hoping for, and this is probably what I'll end up my year-end review on for Star Citizen this year, is this game reaching the expected quality and playability of a Steam early access release, say from a AAA publisher. I think this should be getting fairly close to where something like Fortnite was in, say, 2017. That's if server meshing is working out.
It's like
I've got to call you out, because before we were recording, you were saying it feels like it's becoming a AAA game now.
Yeah.
Should be. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that they showed us, definitely. But it's all about the quality of how it runs.
I think I'll kind of end where we started today before we started recording, where you were talking about the number of content creators coming into the space, and I'll put that out to the community as well. Are you guys noticing there are more and more and more people starting to cover this game? We are rounding the bell curve. So those of you that have been here for the long term, or even anyone before now, so to speak, like there's going to be this noticeable change in the community because just so much. Well, I think someone told me the other day we just hit 5 million accounts.
Yeah.
We'd either hit it or we were just about to hit it.
We hit it.
So yeah.
Then another few thousand in the next couple days.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So we're expanding at an exponential rate.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then, Space, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, I mean, Google's very easy. Makes it easy. You could just Google search for Space Tomato. But I've got my main YouTube channel, Space Tomato, which is just, mid to short length feature heavy videos that focus on the kind of stuff we talked about today. Space Tomato 2 goes into deep dives and podcasts, a lot like this format. And then we do our podcasts on audio platforms, and I stream on Twitch.
It's almost like you're copying us. No, just kidding.
I do. I came in and I copied everybody. No, it's a lot of stuff to be able to do with Star Citizen, and a lot of ways to cover it. And we have found, I think, our favorites.
We all rib off each other, so we're used to it at that point.
Yep.
All right, then. He's been Algared. He's been Space Tomato. Oh, they're backwards. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. You know who to. All right. See you, citizens. Say goodbye, everyone.
Okay, guys.